What is happening, everybody? James Hancock here. I'm back to review the new horror film Bring Her Back from directors Danny and Michael Philippou, otherwise known as Raka Raka, two Australian directors who are rapidly building a reputation as two of the best directors working within the horror genre. And I don't know if they have any ambitions outside the horror genre, but if you like their first film, Talk to Me, you're probably going to like Bring Her Back. Although I should say from the outset, and I'll be going spoiler-free until I give you a verbal warning as well as a time code down below. But I've got two friends whose taste I trust. One loved Bring Her Back, one hated Bring Her Back. So I'm expecting a wide range of different responses to this movie. And I get it. I was thrilled by it, and I was disgusted by it, and I spent a lot of the movie kind of squirming in my seat and like kind of covering up. It's revolting. It's a really gooey, tactile, kind of wet, disgusting experience in a lot of ways. But it also keeps the audience in the dark for much of the movie, where if you don't like feeling frustrated about mysteries or the plot, you're going to be kind of angry throughout most of it. The movie, it reveals enough of its hand where by the end of the story you have like a basic understanding of kind of the laws of this supernatural setting. And anytime you're kind of venturing outside of pathways that have been determined by horror movies in the past, you kind of have to slowly but surely clue the audience in as to what are the rules and the mechanics for how the horror functions. On the other hand, if you reveal too much, all the mystery and atmosphere and that sort of thing can be lost. So the filmmakers are definitely involved in a little bit of a high wire act where they want to keep you in the dark to a degree so that you're mystified and horrified by the experience, but they also need to spoon feed you just enough information so that you know what the hell is going on. But here is the official premise from IMDb, and once again, no spoilers until later in the video, but the official premise is a brother and sister uncover a terrifying ritual at the secluded home of their new foster mother. And I should add that the new foster mother is played by Sally Hawkins, who does a brilliant job in this movie, and she'll go down in history as one of the great crazed mothers within the horror genre. And the horror genre is filled with a lot of crazy mothers, whether that's the mother in Norman Bates' Head and Psycho, or the mother in Carrie. Sally Hawkins, what's great about her performance is that she's one of those people that's even more disturbing because she knows how to put on a proper face in public where no one would ever suspect what she's got going on behind the scenes. And I'm trying to be as vague as humanly possible about what these rituals might be that she's conducting behind closed doors. But if you like crazy mothers in horror, well, then you're going to love Sally Hawkins in this movie. But there's also a fine tradition within the horror genre of spooky kids. And if you like to see spooky kids in horror movies, luckily there's an ocean of great contenders out there, whether you're talking about the little girls in The Shining, or the little girl in The Exorcist, or the little boy in Pet Sematary.
Had an awful good time.
What did you do?
What did you do?
Pet Cemetery.
Now I'm gonna play with you.
One of my favorite obscure spooky kids movies is one that I saw on TV as a little kid, and it just warped my brain. I'm sure I'd find it ridiculous now, but there's a movie from 1980 called The Children, where this bus goes by, I think like nuclear waste or some sort of radiation or smoke or whatever, but all their fingernails turn black and they run around just like sucking the life out of people and feeding on them.
Oh, it's the children. No, please.
And it just absolutely broke my brain as well as my older brother's brain way back in a bygone era. Long story short, whether you're talking about like the original Village of the Damned or now Bring Her Back, people love to see spooky kids in horror, and this movie gives us one of the best spooky kids in horror in a long time. And without revealing what they do or how they do it or why they do it, all I'll say is that some of the actions of the spooky kid in this flick had me writhing in pain. I mean, just squirming. There's one scene where you hear a sound effect, you're like, oh God, what am I about to see? And then they show you, and I kind of did like I flung my arms out, like somehow that was going to protect me from what I had seen. And for like 5 or 10 minutes after that, I was just like, ugh. I couldn't recover from what I'd seen. It was fucking disgusting. Then later on in the movie, we all have parts of our body that we don't like to have messed with. And there's certain horror movies that do a good job of getting under your skin or your fingernails or your eyelids or whatever. There's something that the spooky kid is doing which tapped into one of my phobias about one of the parts of my body. And I was once again like choking back the gag reflex and that sort of thing. And you never quite know what like might tap into those hidden parts of the brain when you're watching a horror movie. And that's what's like part of the fun of it. Like Roman Polanski talked about when he made the movie Repulsion back in the 1960s. For whatever reason, he can't see a straight razor or a straight edge. Just the sight of a razor out of its sheath just gives him the heebie-jeebies. So of course they went right into the movie because he wanted his phobias to become the audience phobias. I don't have a phobia about razor blades at all, but you never know what might be like your thing that kind of sets you off. All I'll say is that this movie managed to tap into my thing on more than one occasion. And the best part about this movie is how the filmmakers have managed to avoid the dreaded sophomore slump. We've seen it happen over and over and over again, where filmmakers will make a low-budget movie that gets acquired for big bucks, makes big bucks in the theater, and then they get like paralysis through overanalysis and they can never follow it up. I would argue that this is a better movie than Talk to Me. Talk to Me might be more emotionally satisfying, and perhaps I like the ending of Talk to Me more. Talk to Me is a very bleak, grim ending, and I like it when horror movies refuse to kind of reset or reestablish the status quo. I like it when a horror movie just obliterates the status quo, but that can get a little predictable. I'm not going to give away the ending here, but I like the ending to Talk to Me. But what I liked about this movie is it's just a very visceral, disgusting movie. It has so many fluids. Like, it makes Australia look like the rainiest fucking place on earth. And they did shoot it back in Australia. I'm seeing here on Wikipedia, they shot this bad boy back in their home state of South Australia in Adelaide and the surrounding areas like Lightsview. I don't know what any of that means. I've never been to Australia, but if you know your Australian territory or land, then high five to these guys for resurrecting the strong Australian horror tradition. If you ever want to see a great documentary, watch Not Quite Hollywood. It's a movie all about the sex films and the horror films and the killer road movies and all these just wild genre films being made in Australia in the 70s and 80s. But back in the day, Australians were cranking out horror movies left and right. And I feel like there always needs to be room in the overall kind of international movie landscape for fine Ozploitation movies. So yeah, high five to Danny and Michael for keeping it going. But getting back to the whole thing about this movie being kind of like gooey or having a lot of fluids, we live in an era where so many movies feel digitized or created on a computer or created by AI. It's nice to have a movie where whether it's blood or tears or piss or spit or just any fluid you can think of, like the movie is just like it's constantly immersing you in this kind of disgusting atmosphere. Even like oozy zits, like whatever kind of fluid you can think of, it is featured prominently in this movie, and it's got to be done on purpose, where it's just trying to make you, well, I don't want to give away a spoiler, but let's just say it's trying to be as immersive in the kind of the theme or the main idea of the horror as humanly possible. So long story short, I absolutely got my money's worth. And that's always the big question with a movie that's playing in the theater. Is it worth getting in your car or getting on the subway or getting on a bike or whatever form of transportation you choose and going to a theater and slapping down cash as opposed to staying at home and farting into your sofa and watching some streaming show? And I think this movie is absolutely worth seeing in a theater with a crowd, because I was a little worried when my movie was getting started, because I'd say my theater was about half full. It was a 4 p.m. screening, and about half of them were just talking up a storm. Obnoxious as hell. I mean, one of the good sides and the bad sides of the horror genre is that it appeals to a lot of young people, and you have to have young people going to the movies, because then you get young filmmakers, and they keep the art form going. But sometimes young moviegoers can be fucking obnoxious. And they were all just jabbering away throughout the trailers. And I was like, oh, God, this is going to be a disaster. But when the movie got started, they shut the fuck up. Maybe they shut the fuck up to be polite. Or maybe they were just like falling under the spell of the movie. Like, oh, my God, this is disgusting. The big question is it scary? It's atmospheric. And it's stylish. And it's mysterious. I was never like terrified, like, oh no, don't go around the corner. I was more like, oh God, what fresh hell am I going to be exposed to when they go around the corner and show me something totally disgusting? But that's all right. Not every movie needs to be terrifying. Not every movie is capable of being terrifying. There's some footage in it that you'll see in the trailer that's kind of like some grainy old school footage, which I can't really reveal that much about, but that's employed in a really cool way where it's spooky. But I've got a lot of emotional scar tissue saved up from decades of watching horror movies, and it takes a lot to scare me. But if you can't scare me, at least the film needs to disgust me. And on that front, yeah, A+, this movie absolutely soared on that front. I can't remember the last time I was kind of going, ah, while watching something. which has me very excited for the rest of the summer because we're just getting started with all the horror movies coming out. We've got Dangerous Animals, which is more of like a thriller, but it involves sharks, coming out next week. Then like a week or two later, we've got 28 Years Later, which looks killer. Megan 2.0, if you just want to watch, psychotic AI killer doll chicks fighting each other. Together, which is coming out, I think, at the end of July. And got Weapons at the beginning of August, Jimmy and Stiggs in the middle of August, and then there's a new Conjuring movie in September, and there's more to come. I know I sound like a broken record on this channel, but goddamn, it's a good time to be a horror fan. You could ignore all the other genres and just focus on horror movies and still go to the movies almost every week. And I would happily go to the movies every week to watch a new horror movie. My appetite for horror is pretty goddamn high, but yeah, at a minimum this summer, we've got several strong contenders. I imagine that Together, Weapons, and Bring Her Back, or who knows, 28 years later, they're all going to be in a pretty healthy competition for what is the best horror movie of the summer. But before I get into my spoiler section, I should offer at least one criticism of the movie. Just to be honest, I'm not the biggest fan of Billy Barrett and Sora Wong as the children or the teenagers playing the two kids at the core of this movie. And obviously, when you're dealing with child actors or young actors, it's a bit of a roll of the dice, and you never quite know how well they're going to work out in the end. And also, they're acting opposite Sally Hawkins, who's an incredibly experienced actress who's been giving us great performances for fucking decades. And so sometimes if an actor is really, really good, they can kind of bring other actors along for the ride. And other times when an actor is really good, they just make everybody else look a little bit amateur by comparison. Unfortunately, I'm sure as a performer on the set, she's great and a very giving performer where she's trying to get the best performance possible out of the ensemble cast. But she's just, she was acting circles around them. So if there was a flaw in the movie, perhaps these two kids weren't quite up to the task, but I have seen many, many, many horror movies with plenty of horrible performances where the movies are just fine. Sometimes a horror movie is even better with a few unintentional laughs due to performance. And this movie's so violent and so over the top at times, you almost can't help but laugh involuntarily because it's so disgusting. It gets into not like Three Stooges territory, but there's no way to respond. Either you have to projectile vomit or just crack up at how ridiculous it is. And so if you hear some nervous laughter or some unintentional laughter scattered throughout the movie, don't blame the people or don't think of them too harshly because they're just letting off a little steam while watching this wild and crazy movie. But for my spoiler section, there's really only one detail I want to discuss. So last warning, 3, 2, 1, we're going to be talking about spoilers. If you don't want the movie ruined, by all means, bail out now. Let's talk about what's actually kind of like the goal of Sally Hawkins' character in this movie. She had a daughter who was blind who drowned in the backyard pool, and her new foster daughter is blind, and she didn't want to adopt the brother as well, but he insisted upon coming along for the ride. And so Sally Hawkins' character agrees to take both of them, but the brother's basically there on a trial basis because he's almost 18, and she can get rid of him if he misbehaves. And a long time ago, he did have some discipline problems. His biological father, who got remarried, used to beat him, and when he was a kid, he used to lash out and trying to get it. Anyway, I don't want to get too sidetracked with all of his emotional development issues, but there's enough evidence there where Sally Hawkins wants to try to manipulate the lay of the land to her advantage. She can get the brother out of the way, or at least she can try to get the brother out of the way very, very quickly. But her goal in this movie is to bring back her dead daughter, hence the name Bring Her Back. And I don't know how she got her hands on these videotapes because they don't necessarily advertise these kinds of tapes, on cable TV and that sort of thing. But somehow she's gotten access to these tapes that show these rituals where here's like the steps by which you can bring somebody back. So you need the original dead body, preferably preserved in some way, shape, or form. You need the new person who's going to be the vessel for that old person's soul. And then, according to this movie, souls can linger in bodies for several months. So you've got the person that's going to be going into and kind of being taken over by the former person. But you also need a conduit, and that conduit is the spooky kid in this movie. A kid who's been kidnapped by Sally Hawkins, and she's painted this giant circle around the property. And as long as he stays there, he's slowly but surely turning into like this rabid zombie. And at the end of this metamorphosis, basically what will happen, according to this movie, is that he will eat the dead body of the dead daughter, and then he'll basically kind of vomit the soul onto the new body, and then you get rid of the conduit, and then the new person can, in theory, live in peace. But you don't quite know how well the process works because you're watching all this really crazy, disgusting, grainy footage where you can never quite understand what's going on. But luckily, there's one point in the movie or for like 30 seconds, they offer just a little bit of exposition, just enough exposition where you can kind of understand what the hell is going on. So over the course of the movie, the kid who is the conduit, he just gets increasingly more disgusting, and his eyes keep changing, and he's like, he just gets like bloated and gross, and he's eating nasty stuff, and he's biting everything. He just gets increasingly savage and revolting. And that's where most of the kind of the thrills and chills from the movie come about. And of course, you have this sweet, innocent little girl who's also blind, who's running for her life, constantly trying to stay alive and not be possessed, and so on and so forth. But what I liked is how this movie broke some new ground. I've never seen a possession movie or a zombie movie or a bring somebody back from the dead movie that employed this very specific mechanic. And I feel like when you're writing and directing horror movies, it's very hard to break new ground. Since the dawn of time, people have been telling scary stories around a campfire, and then obviously we got them in fiction and in paintings and in movies and in video games. People love to tell and share spooky stories. And I like the fact that these filmmakers aren't like, oh, we're going to bring back the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise. Oh, we're going to bring back the Hills Have Eyes. We're going to basically, try to resurrect one of these classical brands. They are telling new stories their way. Between Talk to Me and Bring Her Back, they've given us 2 brand new original horror movies, and I am all day, every day here for brand new original horror movies, especially when they're fucking effective and disgusting and disturbing. So the only question now is, how are people going to respond to social workers and guidance counselors moving forward? Because Hallie Hawkins' character in this movie is constantly telling people, like, I get paid to talk to people, and I get paid to counsel people. You can talk to me, I can listen, and blah, blah, blah. She portrays her profession in a very negative light, although there's one of her former co-workers who kind of redeems their profession at one point in the movie. But I'll be very curious to see how people respond to the Sally Hawkins character, because over the course of the movie, she just gets increasingly deranged and psychotic and manipulative and unpredictable. And that is what the horror genre is for. It's an opportunity for people to let their hair down, get weird, go to some very strange, dark places where the characters are just constantly covered in vomit and blood and pee and spittle and just all kinds of disgusting shit. I mean, like I said before, it is one of the gooeyest, wettest horror movies that I can remember seeing. I enjoyed it. Did I completely, totally love it unreservedly? There's something about the ending where the characters, I won't say they get let off the hook, because there are some tragedies along the way, but the little girl that is going to be the vessel for the soul does manage to get away. Whereas in Talk to Me, the girl becomes yet another ghost who's going to become like the new person talking to people when they grab that spooky hand. I like the dark ending of Talk to Me more, but form your own conclusions. There's room for a wide array of different reactions. Like I said, there's one friend of mine who just thought the movie was ridiculous, and there's one friend of mine who says it was the best movie that he's seen all year. And I'm expecting a wide range of reactions moving forward. But the good news is we still have tons of potentially kick-ass horror movies coming out over the rest of the summer. So, yeah, we're going to be talking about horror movies all goddamn season long, and I'm here for all of the above. So the big question now is, what do Danny and Michael Philippou want to do moving forward? Because clearly, if they wanted to, they could stay with A24 for a long time. A24 made a fucking fortune off their last movie. And anytime you make anybody a fortune, well, they'll give you a couple turns at bat. I don't know if they want to stay within this genre or not, but it's just exciting to have young, cool filmmakers to be excited about. These guys, they're twins, and they were born in 1992, which makes them now, they were born in November. They're almost 33 years old. Filmmaking needs more young filmmakers. Like in the 1990s, when I was coming of age, I felt like a lot of filmmakers out there who were in their 20s and 30s at the time, they felt like rock stars in a lot of ways as opposed to filmmakers. And I feel like sometimes movies, they get dominated by aging directors and aging executives, and they kind of lose touch with the vitality that makes movies really visceral and exciting. But these guys are young, dumb, and full of cum, and sick and twisted and all fucked up, and I totally approve of all the above. So I hope they'll stick with the horror genre for many, many years to come and continue to make me recoil in my seat until I'm a very, very old man. But let me know what you think down in the comments below. Very fired up to hear what people have to say. I think I chose wisely with this one. It was between this or the Phoenician Scheme before I skip town. I'm leaving town tomorrow through Sunday, and both movies open this weekend. I saved Phoenician Scheme till Monday because I just think that movie looks dreadful. So yeah, I think I made the right choice with Bring Her Back, but let me know what y'all think. And I'll be back to review the Phoenician Scheme either Monday or Tuesday whenever I get a chance to check it out. But if you enjoyed this video, please consider liking, subscribing, hitting that notification bell, all that good stuff. But more importantly, as always, onwards and upwards.